The massive arena on Kethvar Prime stretched across several city blocks, its crystalline walls rising into the purple sky like jagged teeth. Inside, thousands of alien spectators filled the floating seats that orbited the central combat pit. The air buzzed with excitement and the constant chatter of dozens of different languages, all translated through neural implants that made communication possible across the galaxy's many species. Zektar adjusted his forearms against the railing, his reptilian eyes focused on the betting boards that flickered with holographic numbers. As a Velrathi trader, he had made fortune after fortune by reading the odds correctly. Today looked like another easy profit. "Look at this joke," Zektar hissed to his companion, a floating jellyfish-like equarry named Bloop. "They actually entered humans in the Galactic Combat Championships this cycle." Bloop's translucent body pulsed with amused colors. "Humans? Those tiny pink things from the outer rim? The ones who barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago?" "The very same." Zektar's forked tongue flicked out in what passed for laughter among his people. "I heard they sent 3 representatives. 3. As if quantity could make up for their obvious genetic shortcomings." The arena's main screen displayed the current match statistics. A massive Krogan warrior, standing nearly 12 feet tall and covered in natural bone armor, was systematically destroying a Fenari speedfighter whose 6 legs moved so fast they blurred. The crowd roared approval as the Krogan's devastating punch sent the Fenari flying across the pit. "Now that's what real combat looks like," Zektar said, placing a substantial bet on the Krogan for the next round. "These humans think they can compete against warriors who have evolved specifically for battle. It's almost sad." In the competitors section, a small group of humans sat quietly. They wore simple gray uniforms that looked plain compared to the elaborate armor and enhancement suits of other fighters. Other competitors pointed and laughed openly. A group of Zephyrian bird-like aliens preened their metallic feathers and made chirping sounds that everyone understood as mockery. "I give the humans maybe 30 seconds each," declared Vorg, a massive Turian whose carapace bore the scars of 100 victories. "Their bones are too weak, their muscles too small. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced genetics." "What were the tournament organizers thinking?" The first human fighter's name appeared on the screen. Marcus Chen, representing Earth Colony Defense Force. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Several spectators threw empty food containers toward the human section, which the arena's force fields deflected harmlessly. Marcus stood up slowly. He was average height for a human, maybe 6 feet tall, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. His muscular build looked impressive by human standards, but appeared almost childlike compared to the alien warriors around him. He wore no armor except for basic impact padding on his joints. "This is embarrassing," Bloop gurgled. "Should we even bother watching? I have better entertainment programs on my datapad." Zektar was already counting his winnings. "Wait, I want to see this. It's not often you get to witness such a complete mismatch. Besides, the faster we eliminate these humans, the sooner we get to the real fights." The arena announcer, a 6-armed Hexarian whose voice boomed through the stadium, began the introduction. "Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all classifications, welcome to Round 16 of the Galactic Combat Championships. In the blue corner, weighing in at 800 pounds of pure muscle and bone, standing 12 feet and 4 inches tall, with a record of 43 wins and 0 losses, the unstoppable crusher of worlds, Thraktor the Destroyer." The massive Krogan warrior entered the pit through a tunnel lined with flame jets. His natural bone plates gleamed under the arena lights, and his 4 arms flexed muscles that looked like tree trunks. Each step shook the ground. The crowd went wild, chanting his name in dozens of languages. "And in the red corner," the announcer continued, his voice taking on a noticeably less enthusiastic tone, "representing the recently contacted world of Earth, weighing in at 185 pounds, standing 6 feet tall, with a record of, well, this is his first interstellar competition. Marcus Chen. Marcus walked into the pit without fanfare. No flames, no dramatic music, no ceremonial displays. He simply entered, looked around calmly at the massive crowd, and took his position. The size difference between him and Thractor was so extreme, it looked like a child facing an adult. "This is going to be over before it starts," Zektar said, already imaging the credits flowing into his account. The arena's combat field activated, creating an impenetrable energy barrier around the fighting area. Medical drones hovered nearby, ready to extract unconscious or dead fighters. Thractor flexed all four arms and roared a challenge that made the arena walls vibrate. Marcus said nothing. He didn't flex, didn't roar, didn't even raise his fists yet. He just stood there, breathing steadily, watching his opponent with those calm brown eyes. "Begin combat!" the announcer declared. Thractor charged immediately, his massive form thundering across the arena floor. Each step left cracks in the reinforced surface. His four arms spread wide, intending to grab the human and end the fight with a single crushing embrace. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the inevitable splatter. But something unexpected happened. Marcus moved. Not the desperate scrambling that most fighters showed when faced with a charging Krogan, but something else entirely. He stepped to the side with perfect timing, so smoothly it almost looked casual. Thractor's massive form sailed past him, the Krogan's own momentum carrying him into the arena wall with a tremendous crash that sent vibrations through the entire structure. The crowd's cheers faltered slightly. That wasn't supposed to happen. Thractor had never missed a charge before. The Krogan spun around, roaring in anger and embarrassment. This time he approached more carefully, using his reach advantage to throw massive punches that could shatter reinforced concrete. Each swing whistled through the air with enough force to kill most beings instantly. Marcus dodged them all. He didn't just duck or lean back, he moved like water, flowing around each attack with minimal effort. When Thractor threw a right hook, Marcus slipped inside the punch and stepped back out before the Krogan could grab him. When all four arms came down in a devastating overhead smash, Marcus wasn't there anymore. "What is he doing?" Bloop asked, his body shifting to confused purple colors. "He's not even trying to attack." Zektar's confident expression was starting to crack. "He's just delaying the inevitable. No one can keep that up forever." But Marcus kept it up for minutes that felt like hours. Thractor grew increasingly frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder and less controlled. The Krogan was breathing heavily now, his massive form starting to show signs of exhaustion. In all his previous fights, opponents had either been crushed immediately or had tried to fight back and been overwhelmed. No one had ever made him work this hard just to land a single hit. Then something changed in Marcus's posture. His stance shifted slightly, his weight settling differently on his feet. For the first time since entering the arena, he raised his hands into fighting position. Thractor sensed the change and charged again, this time putting everything into a devastating four-armed combination that should have been impossible to avoid in the confined space. Marcus stepped forward into the attack instead of away from it. The move was so unexpected that even Thractor hesitated for a split second. In that moment of confusion, Marcus did something that no one in the arena had ever seen before. He jumped, not a desperate leap or a clumsy tackle, but a perfectly controlled vertical jump that carried him up and forward. His right fist, small by galactic standards but moving with incredible speed and precision, connected with a spot just below Thractor's massive jaw. The sound of the impact echoed through the suddenly silent arena. Thractor's eyes rolled back. His enormous body swayed for a moment, and then the unstoppable crusher of worlds, the undefeated champion of 17 different fighting circuits, collapsed like a felled tree. The arena fell into absolute silence, 40,000 alien spectators stared in shock as Marcus landed lightly on his feet, stepped back from the unconscious Krogan, and calmly walked to his corner. The medical drones rushed to check on Thractor, their scanners confirming what everyone could see but no one could believe. The human had won. Not through luck or accident or technicality, but through pure fighting skill that none of them had imagined possible. Zektar's 4 hands shook as he stared at his now worthless betting slip. Around the arena, thousands of other spectators were having the same realization. They had just witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about humans. In the competitors section, other fighters were no longer laughing. They were studying the remaining 2 human representatives with new interest and growing concern. The announcer's voice, when it finally returned, sounded stunned. Winner by knockout, Marcus Chen of Earth. As the crowd slowly began to process what they had just witnessed, one thought echoed through thousands of alien minds. If this was what an average human could do, what were the other 2 capable of? The second human fighter, Sarah Martinez, stood up and began stretching. Unlike Marcus's calm demeanor, she was smiling. And somehow, that smile was even more terrifying than anything they had seen in the ring. The arena's medical bay buzzed with activity as Thractor slowly regained consciousness. The massive Krogan's first words were a confused mumble about impossible physics, and where did the asteroid come from? The attending physicians, a team of highly trained Zelrani healers, exchanged worried glances. Their patient showed signs of a clean knockout with no permanent damage, but his ego might need more time to recover than his jaw. Meanwhile, in the competitor preparation area, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Where once there had been casual dismissal and open mockery of the human delegation, now there was careful observation and quiet concern. Fighter after fighter found excuses to walk past the human corner, trying to get a better look at these strange beings who had just turned their understanding of combat upside down. Sarah Martinez sat in meditation pose, her breathing controlled and even. She appeared smaller than Marcus, maybe 5 feet 6 inches tall, with auburn hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Her build was lean rather than bulky, suggesting speed over power. What made other fighters nervous was her complete calm. Most beings showed some sign of pre-fight anxiety, twitching, pacing, aggressive displays, or nervous energy. Sarah looked like she was preparing for a pleasant afternoon walk. "This makes no sense," growled Commander Vex-High of the Dominion Guard, a cybernetically enhanced warrior whose metal implants gleamed under the lights. "Humans have no enhanced genetics, no natural armor, no toxin resistance. They shouldn't be able to compete at this level." His companion, a crystalline being called Shard, whose body could literally cut through steel, vibrated with uncertain harmonics. Perhaps their planet has higher gravity? That would explain increased bone density and muscle efficiency? "Earth gravity is actually lower than galactic standard," interrupted Dr. Kinthara, the arena's chief xenobiologist. She had been frantically researching human physiology since Marcus's victory. 0.98 compared to our baseline of 1.1. If anything, they should be weaker than average. The conversation was overheard by dozens of competitors, spreading the confusion further. If humans weren't physically superior, how had Marcus defeated Thractor so easily? Sarah opened her eyes and smiled at the group of aliens, pretending not to stare at her. "You're wondering how we do it, aren't you?" The directness of her question caught them off guard. Most species had complex social protocols about pre-fight interactions. Humans, it seemed, preferred straightforward communication. Vex-High's cybernetic eye focused on her. "Your companion's victory was unexpected. We are curious about human combat methodology." "Well," Sarah said, standing and beginning a series of stretching exercises that looked more like dance moves than combat preparation. We have this thing called adaptability. Evolution gave us a bunch of different advantages instead of one big obvious one. She demonstrated by touching her toes, then rotating her shoulders in ways that made the more rigid aliens wince. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest individually, but we learn really, really fast, and we fight dirty when we have to. Before anyone could ask what fighting dirty meant in human terms, the arena announcer's voice boomed throughout the complex. Attention competitors and spectators, round 17 will commence in 5 minutes, representing the Arachnid Collective, the web spinner of death, 8-time champion Silthkar, facing the representative of Earth, Sarah Martinez. The announcement triggered a wave of activity. Spectators who had been planning to get refreshments during what they expected to be another human embarrassment suddenly decided to stay for this fight. Betting odds, which had started heavily against the human, began fluctuating wildly as gamblers tried to figure out if Marcus's victory was a fluke or a sign of things to come. Silthkar emerged from her preparation chamber like a nightmare given form. Standing 7 feet tall on 6 segmented legs, her arachnid body was covered in natural chitin armor that had deflected bullets in previous fights. Her 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and her alien features showed the cold intelligence that had made her a strategic master in the ring. Most terrifying of all were the organic web shooters on her wrists, capable of creating restraints stronger than titanium cables. "Now this is interesting," Zektar muttered, having moved closer to the arena rail. After losing his fortune on the previous fight, he was now studying every detail for clues about human capabilities. Silthkar doesn't rely on brute force like Thraktor. She's a tactical fighter. If the human tries the same evasion tactics, they'll get caught in a web and torn apart. Bloop's body swirled with nervous colors. "I heard Silthkar once caught a Fenari speedrunner in mid-sprint. How fast can humans actually move?" They were about to find out. Sarah entered the arena with the same casual confidence Marcus had shown. No dramatic entrance, no intimidation displays, no ceremonial weapons. She wore the same simple gray uniform with basic padding, looking almost fragile compared to Silthkar's armored magnificence. The size difference was less extreme than in the previous fight, but Silthkar's extra limbs and natural weapons gave her an obvious advantage. Her species had evolved as apex predators on a world where everything else was trying to kill them. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a world where they mostly had to worry about the weather. "This should be over quickly," announced Lord Kethvar himself, the arena's owner and a member of the species that had given the planet its name. His crystalline form pulsed with confident energy. "Silthkar will web the human in the first exchange, then demonstrate why arachnids are superior hunters." The combat field activated, sealing both fighters in the arena. Silthkar immediately began moving in complex patterns, her 6 legs carrying her around the perimeter, while her arms prepared web shooters for maximum coverage. It was a proven strategy that had worked against every type of opponent she'd ever faced. Sarah stood in the center of the arena and waited. Begin combat. Silthkar's first move was a web shot designed to entangle Sarah's legs and limit her mobility. The organic material shot out faster than most beings could track, spreading into a net pattern that should have been impossible to avoid. Sarah didn't try to avoid it. Instead, she dove forward, sliding under the web on her belly like she was stealing home base in an ancient human sport. The maneuver was so unexpected that Silthkar's follow-up shots passed harmlessly over the human's head. But sliding had been a feint. As Sarah came out of her slide, she sprang upward with explosive force, launching herself directly at Silthkar's center mass. The arachnid warrior tried to backpedal, but her own web shots had created obstacles behind her. Sarah's shoulder hit Silthkar just below where her torso joined her leg assembly. It wasn't a devastating impact by itself, but it accomplished something more important. It knocked Silthkar off balance and inside her guard range. What followed was unlike anything the galactic combat community had ever seen. Sarah stuck to Silthkar like a parasite, using the arachnid's own body as cover against her claws and web shooters. When Silthkar tried to grab her, Sarah flowed around the limb and attacked from a new angle. When the arachnid tried to slam her against the ground, Sarah used the momentum to vault to a different position. "She's treating Silthkar like jungle gym equipment," whispered Dr. Kinthera in amazement. "Look at how she uses the opponent's own body geometry against them." It was true. Sarah never stayed in one position long enough for Silthkar to pin her down, but she never moved far enough away to let the arachnid use her reach advantage either. She was fighting in the one space where Silthkar's natural weapons became liabilities instead of assets. And then Sarah began her real attack. Humans, the audience was learning, had thumbs. More importantly, they had precision grip strength developed over millions of years of tool use. While hanging onto Silthkar's carapace with one hand, Sarah used her free hand to find nerve clusters and joint connections with surgical precision. Silthkar shrieked as Sarah's fingers found pressure points that even the arachnid herself didn't know existed. Each touch sent spasms through different leg groups, disrupting the coordination that made Silthkar such a dangerous fighter. "Impossible!" Lord Cathavar's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. "She's performing acupressure combat techniques that would require detailed knowledge of arachnid anatomy. How could a human know our medical databases?" Dr. Kinthara was frantically taking notes. Unless they don't need database access. Humans might be capable of real-time anatomical analysis through tactile examination." The fight continued for several more minutes, but the outcome was becoming inevitable. Silthkar, for all her natural advantages and technical skill, had never faced an opponent who could literally feel their way to victory. Every time she tried a new tactic, Sarah adapted within seconds, finding new pressure points and nerve clusters to exploit. The end came when Sarah managed to reach a spot just behind Silthkar's main eye cluster. A gentle pressure that wouldn't have bruised human skin triggered an involuntary paralysis response in the arachnid nervous system. Silthkar collapsed, conscious but completely unable to move. Sarah dropped lightly to the arena floor and stepped back, just as Marcus had done. She looked up at the silent crowd and gave a small wave, as if she'd just finished a practice session instead of defeating one of the galaxy's most feared fighters. The medical drones confirmed what everyone could see. Silthkar was completely uninjured, except for her pride. Sarah had won through technique so precise it bordered on surgical. As the arena erupted in confused chatter, Zektar stared at his second worthless betting slip of the day. Around him, thousands of aliens were having the same realization he'd had after Marcus's fight, but stronger now. They had been wrong about humans. Completely, utterly, dangerously wrong. In the competitors section, the third human representative stood up. This one was different from the others. Where Marcus had been calm and Sarah had been cheerful, the third human looked like he was barely containing something violent. His name tag read James Wilson, but his expression suggested that names might not matter much longer. As Sarah left the arena to thunderous confusion from the crowd, one thought echoed through thousands of alien minds. If this was what human fighters could do to their best warriors, what else had they been wrong about regarding this strange new species? The answer, they were about to learn, was everything. The arena's administrative offices buzzed with panicked activity. Lord Cathavar floated before a massive holographic display showing betting patterns, fighter statistics, and most importantly, the plummeting confidence ratings for every non-human competitor remaining in the tournament. What had started as a routine championship was rapidly becoming the most significant event in galactic combat history. "Sir," reported his chief administrator, a nervous Zelrani whose tentacles were turning pale with stress. We have a problem. 17 fighters have submitted withdrawal requests in the last hour. 3 more have claimed sudden illness. The Korvax delegation is demanding to review human genetic modification records before they'll allow their champion to fight. Lord Kethvar's crystalline form pulsed with frustrated energy. And the betting situation? Catastrophic. The odds on human fighters have gone from 50 to 1 against to 2 to 1 in favor. We've got riots at betting stations. Half the gambling houses in the sector are calling for the matches to be suspended pending investigation. Through the office's viewing portal, they could see the arena floor being prepared for the day's final match. The cleanup crew worked in unusual silence, still processing what they'd witnessed. Even these lowly maintenance workers understood that something fundamental had changed in the last few hours. "What about the third human?" Lord Kethvar asked. His administrator's tentacles went completely white. "James Wilson. The database says he's a former military specialist, but Earth authorities classified most of his service record. His psychological evaluation shows concerning patterns for what humans call post-traumatic stress, but their delegation insists he's fit for competition." "And his opponent?" "That's the other problem. General Korath volunteered." Lord Kethvar's glow dimmed significantly. General Korath was not just another fighter. He was the supreme military commander of the Hegemony Armed Forces, a 12-foot-tall Craxian whose species had conquered 47 star systems through pure military superiority. Korath had requested to enter the tournament personally after watching human fighters humiliate 2 of the galaxy's best warriors. This was no longer about entertainment or sport. This had become about species superiority and military reputation. Down in the competitor preparation area, the atmosphere had shifted from curious concern to open hostility. Fighters who had planned to leave the arena now crowded around monitors, watching replay footage of the human victories and trying to understand what they were really seeing. "It's some kind of enhanced neurology," insisted Commander Vexhai, his cybernetic implants working overtime to analyze combat footage. "No natural species could have those reaction times and situational awareness." "The scans say they're completely baseline," countered Dr. Kinthera, reviewing her data for the 100th time. "No genetic modifications, no cybernetic implants, no chemical enhancements. By every measure we use, they should be inferior fighters." Shard vibrated with agitation. "Then our measures are wrong. These humans are using capabilities we don't understand." The conversation was interrupted by heavy footsteps that made the floor vibrate. General Korath had arrived, and his presence dominated the space like a gravitational field. His natural bone armor was scarred from 100 battles, and his 4 arms bore weapons that had personally ended wars. Unlike other fighters who wore sport gear, Korath was dressed for actual combat. "Where is the human?" Korath's voice sounded like grinding stone. James Wilson looked up from where he'd been sitting quietly in the corner. Unlike his teammates, he hadn't been socializing or demonstrating techniques. He'd been sitting alone, staring at nothing, occasionally muttering words in a human language the translators couldn't process properly. James was built differently from Marcus and Sarah. Heavier through the shoulders, with scars visible on his hands and neck. His gray uniform fit tighter, showing muscle definition that suggested serious physical conditioning. But it was his eyes that made the other fighters step back. There was something in James's gaze that spoke of violence at a level most civilized beings never encountered. "That's me," James said simply, standing up. He was actually shorter than his teammates, maybe 5 feet 10 inches, but something about his presence made him seem larger. Korath studied him with the analytical gaze of a professional soldier. "You are not like the others." "No," James agreed, "I'm not. Your companions fought with precision and technique. You fight with something else." James's expression didn't change. "Yeah." The brief exchange sent chills through every observer. There was an understanding between these two that transcended species, culture, or language. They recognized each other as predators. "This is fascinating," Dr. Kinthera whispered to her recording device. "We're observing some kind of warrior-class recognition behavior. Note how other fighters are instinctively increasing their distance from both participants." The arena announcer's voice interrupted the tension. "Final match of the day! Representing the hegemony military forces, 43 years of service, conqueror of the Vega Rebellion, the Iron Fist of Justice, General Korath." The crowd's response was immediate and thunderous. Korath was a living legend, a military genius whose tactical innovations were studied in war colleges across the galaxy. As he entered the arena, weapons systems built into his armor activated, creating an intimidating display of military technology. And representing Earth, former military specialist, combat veteran, James Wilson. James walked into the arena without ceremony, exactly like his teammates. But unlike Marcus's calm confidence or Sarah's cheerful competence, James moved like he was walking to work. There was no emotion, no excitement, no fear. Just professional acceptance of another job that needed doing. The contrast was stark. Korath looked like a one-being army equipped with the finest military technology in the galaxy. James looked like a maintenance worker who happened to be very good at violence. Zektar had given up betting entirely. Instead, he was studying James with the intensity of someone whose entire world view was crumbling. "Look at his stance. That's not athletic positioning, that's assault positioning." Bloop's colors shifted to deep purple with concern. "Maybe we should leave. This feels different from the other matches." They weren't wrong. Even Lord Kethvar was having doubts about allowing this fight to continue. Both participants radiated a level of dangerous competence that suggested this might not end with a clean knockout. The combat field activated, sealing both fighters in the arena. Korath immediately began activating his weapon systems while moving to establish optimal firing position. His strategy was sound. Use superior reach and firepower to eliminate the human before close combat became possible. James didn't move from his starting position. He just stood there, watching Korath's deployment pattern with professional interest. "Begin combat!" Korath's opening salvo was devastating. Energy weapons designed to destroy armored vehicles fired in overlapping patterns that should have reduced James to component atoms. The arena's defensive system strained to contain the blast effects. When the energy discharges cleared, James was gone. Not vaporized, not knocked down. Simply not where he'd been standing. Korath's tactical systems immediately began scanning for the human, but their sensors found nothing. It was as if James had vanished from the arena entirely. "Where did he go?" demanded Lord Kethvar, checking his own monitoring systems. Dr. Kinthera was studying her readouts in amazement. "He's still in the arena. The life sign monitors confirm it. But he's invisible to targeting systems somehow." "That's impossible. Nothing organic can fool hegemony military sensors." "Unless," Dr. Kinthera said slowly, "unless organic intelligence is capable of something our technology isn't designed to detect." In the arena, Korath was discovering the limits of technological superiority. His weapons were designed to fight other machines, other soldiers equipped with detection gear and following logical tactical patterns. James was following different rules entirely. The first sign of the human's presence was when one of Korath's shoulder-mounted sensors exploded, not from weapon fire, but from a precisely placed strike that turned advanced technology into sparking fragments. Korath spun around, firing blindly, but James was already gone again. A second later, another system failed, then a third. "He's systematically disabling the general's equipment," observed Commander Vex High in disbelief. "How is he getting close enough to do that?" The answer was becoming clear to those who understood warfare at its most fundamental level. James wasn't fighting a technological battle or even a physical one. He was fighting a psychological war. Korath, for all his experience and training, before a massive holographic display showing betting patterns, fighter statistics, and most importantly, the plummeting confidence ratings for every non-human competitor remaining in the tournament. What had started as a routine championship was rapidly becoming the most significant event in galactic combat history. Had spent his career fighting enemies who fought back according to recognizable patterns. James was doing something different. He was hunting. Human beings, the crowd was learning, were persistence predators. On their home world, they had gained intelligence specifically to hunt prey that was individually superior to them. They had developed patience, planning, and the ability to think like their targets. James was applying millions of years of evolutionary programming to a combat situation. Another weapon system died. Then another. Korath's tactical advantage was disappearing piece by piece, and he still hadn't gotten a clear shot at his opponent. "This is how humans actually fight," Sarah said quietly from the competitor viewing area. "Marcus and I were showing off. James is working." The general was starting to panic, firing randomly and calling out challenges in his native language. His sophisticated military training was failing him because it was designed for conventional warfare, not for dealing with a predator that treated technology as an obstacle to work around rather than a threat to respect. When James finally appeared in the open, it was because he had decided the hunt was over. Korath's weapon systems were mostly disabled, his armor's power supply was compromised, and his tactical position was hopeless. The general raised his remaining weapons for a final assault. James moved like his teammates had, but differently. Where Marcus had been fluid and Sarah had been precise, James was inevitable. He didn't dodge Korath's attacks so much as he was simply not where they arrived. His counterattacks were not elegant techniques, but practical applications of force designed to efficiently disable an opponent. The fight ended when James did something that no one in the arena had seen before. Instead of a knockout blow or a submission hold, he simply stopped fighting. Korath was on the ground, conscious but completely unable to continue. Every weapon system was disabled, every tactical advantage was gone, but there were no serious injuries. "He could have killed him," Dr. Kinthera whispered. "At any point in that fight, the human could have killed General Korath. He chose not to." The arena fell silent as the implications sank in. This hadn't been a contest between fighters. It had been a demonstration of capability that ended with an act of mercy. James walked over to Korath and extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, the general took it and allowed himself to be helped to his feet. They exchanged words that the translators couldn't process, but the meaning was clear: professional respect between warriors. As James left the arena, the crowd finally understood what they had witnessed. 3 human fighters had not just defeated 3 superior opponents. They had demonstrated that every assumption about human capabilities, human intelligence, and human potential had been catastrophically wrong. In the administrative offices, Lord Kethvar was already receiving communications from military commands across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know more about these humans, these impossible beings who fought like nothing anyone had ever seen. Zektar sat in the empty arena long after the crowds had left, staring at the combat pit where everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had changed forever. Humans weren't just another species seeking entertainment or recognition. They were something new entirely, something that made all the old certainties obsolete. The humans had come to their arena as unknowns from the galactic rim. They were leaving as the most feared and respected fighters in known space, and everyone was beginning to suspect that fighting might be the least impressive thing humans were capable of.